Welcome everybody to the very first Orlando Backend Devs Meetup. I think that's like a round of applause worthy, right? Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy. This isn't already a thing. I know we all have our own different stacks. You know, some of you are probably using Node and Python, and we're using .NET. It's kind of cool for us to come together and talk about what we share in common, which is problems of where you store things, and scalability, and all these kinds of fun things that really don't matter what technology you use. They're all kind of the same. So I'm excited to have you all here, and I'm excited to hopefully make this an awesome meetup. So with that in mind, I've already kind of lined up December as well. So that's going to be December 6th, right here again at PowerDMS. That's a Wednesday. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and formally announce that right now. So you guys can go ahead and sign up for the next one. We actually have one of the speakers for December meetup here with us tonight. We have Alan Blythe with Unikey. So thanks for doing that, Alan. He and I grabbed lunch, was that yesterday? Yeah. Yeah, it was, I enjoyed myself at least. I hope you did too. I hope there was a connection.
Described as geeking out.
So it was super cool to talk to him because we have problems that we work on here at PowerDMS and scalability and all of that stuff. And he has similar problems, but they're also kind of different. And that's why I really wanted to do this, because we all deal with our own different problems, and it's really cool to learn from each other. So I really appreciate you signing up to talk. And definitely want to thank PowerDMS itself. I am normally just the host for these, but I'm also now the organizer, so I have to thank myself. But thank PowerDMS. Thank PowerDMS for the free beer and pizza. So definitely, if you haven't already helped yourselves there, definitely help yourself to some of the beer and pizza. And then one other thing before we get started here, I'm trying to stay ahead of the game here, so I want to line up some quality content for you guys so that you have a reason to keep coming back and we can kind of learn from each other. So if you're interested at all in speaking in January, we've got December figured out, but I would love to go ahead and line that up as well. So just come up, talk to me. We can kind of figure out, what a talk you might want to give might look like. So I think, oh yeah, and one more thing. This is a brand new meetup. We're still going to be figuring things out. So if you have any comments, suggestions, feedback, definitely come talk to me. Reach out on Meetup. Reach out on the Dev Slack. Email me, whatever it is. I want to make this great, so definitely. Feel free to offer some input. And I could also probably use a little help, so if you're interested in that, also come talk to me. I think with that, we're going to start with Taylor. So Taylor gave a cool talk at ODevs here, exactly a year ago, was it?
Yeah, I get another one. If you want to skip to it,
cool. So that was during election night, which was exciting.
Fun time. Don't want to do that again.
So he's got a pretty cool talk for you guys lined up, and I'm going to turn it over to him. This is serverless architecture.
Yes. So, hi there. My name is Taylor Jones. If you get on the internet and you know me, I have kind of secured the brand of "Hi, I'm Taylor Jones." Good career advice, right? Have your own brand. I kind of jokingly do that, but I'm under most social networks, Twitter, GitHub, all the cool stuff under that. I think it's pretty cool. I work at a place called IZEA with a couple folks here. We're down in Winter Park. We do basically marketing software for content and social media marketing. It's really crazy and really fun, and I'd love to explain it to you, but I'm not here to talk about business strategies tonight. I write for a blog on a company called CodeShip. They do CI stuff. They're really cool people, so if you're interested in any of the concepts I talk about, I really like to expand on them there. So tonight, as has been said, I'm talking about serverless architecture. And really about debunking the hype behind it, discovering the truth behind it, and really digesting it all. So we're really going to do the first two tonight, right? I'm going to try to debunk all the hype around it, and we're going to try to find what's going on with it. But the hope is going on from here that we're going to kind of all digest it together and figure out what does it mean for your situation, for your company, for whatever you're doing. But I think it's important to obviously ask what is serverless architecture. Like I always saw articles on the internet, and I was like, what is this? Like, this is so strange. Like, did we build software without servers? Like, I don't understand it. And so like I was scared to research it for the longest time because I was like, I don't want to break my brain over this stuff because I thought it was crazy. I didn't think it was even possible sometimes. Like maybe it meant just client side, I don't know. But the reality, in my opinion, is the name serverless is incredibly misleading. The reason I say this is that it really should be named delegated architecture. And these considerations in serverless architecture are built around the idea that you're not using your own server, but you're using somebody else's server. So the code is still executed and hosted on the server, so it's not serverless, right? But I think that's what always got me, is it was like, why would you name something that it's not? There are cases where the serverless aspect does come into play. But I think for us as backend developers, the stuff I want to discuss tonight is actually hosted on servers. They're just not owned by us physically. So is the question that I naturally have, though, is that we all have our applications, right? We all have to work for companies that deploy to places like AWS, Heroku, DigitalOcean, all that kind of stuff. It's like, is that serverless? Is just hosting your code on the cloud serverless? And I truly believe it's not exactly that. I think, in short, serverless architecture needs a tighter definition than just I pay other people to do this for me, right? I don't want that to be the definition for a third-party provider that is considered serverless. So tonight we're going to talk about two use cases in this. I think they're really relevant to us as backend developers in the way that we're either replaced by them or that we utilize them. And the first one I want to discuss, which is the most relevant to us as backend developers, is function-oriented architecture, is what I like to call it. So what this architecture allows us to do is to define a set of languages or and specific execution patterns on another person's server. So, for example, a big popular one that we're going to discuss in a few examples is AWS Lambda, where I'm able to say, okay, I would like to run this set of code on somebody else's servers and have a response execute to me, and not necessarily pay for the server hosting costs or any of that stuff. So I think, in my opinion, a lot of these services are oriented around the idea that they're linear. You give it an input, it gives you an output. It's not a full running application, right? Like, you're not going to build a complete business off one serverless application a lot of times. I think another important way to think of them is almost as application jobs, right? So if you've ever worked on an application and you say, hey, like, I want to delegate this work to later or to be processed by the server later, it's very similar to that. It's just that server somebody else's. So here's a cool graph that I made up this morning because I realized I don't have any pictures in here. It's just me talking, which is kind of boring sometimes. So the idea of a function is that we have our application right in the blue. We send it a request. It's going to go to that service function, and that service function is going to give us a response. And so I guess to best illustrate this, I'm going to kind of provide some context of what we at IZEA do. Again, a slide distributing that. So anyways, a lot of times we find ourselves at IZEA. We use the model view controller architecture, right? And so we come and say, hey, I'm going to submit a request to our server that I want this data. But sometimes we handle a lot of data and do a lot of stuff that maybe we can't accomplish all that task and all that processing within one request. And so we've had requests before that have lasted 30 seconds, and we're like, this is unacceptable. We can't just let the client just hang there for 30 seconds, right? So we found ourselves wanting to shoot that data to a job and kind of execute it later. For us, as a Ruby shop, we use something called Sidekick that's really fun. And we're also limited by the fact that Ruby is not a synchronous language, and you can read tons about that in blog posts. People having hot takes about it, but I think the fact that it's not necessarily a super asynchronous language, meaning it can't just process multiple threads at once, means for us is that sometimes we have to think a bit more about how we're kind of handling these scenarios. We start to depend on application jobs more, as I kind of mentioned before through Sidekick. We'll do some work in the controller. So for example, you might want to set kind of flags in the controller or kind of switch a few fields, but the majority of the heavy lifting is going to be done by another server. But what happens if you're a company like us and we use a lot of social media APIs, so we're gathering all this data, and there's all this data that needs to be processed for our needs. The reality is we've found that in previous times that we've depended so much on application jobs that our Sidekick instances or our processing server instances were so clogged up, and we're just kind of a total mess to deal with it. Even our DevOps team, which is like, this is just kind of insane, and it was costing us a lot of money, and it was just kind of a pain for us to actually get stuff done. That delegating that work for later meant sometimes hours or days later this work would get done, and so it really wouldn't bring a consistent experience for our application. So we started to look at serverless functions, and the reason for that is that we don't have to worry about the hardware, first of all, but we can also use somebody else's stuff that's a little bit faster, and it's honestly a lot cheaper than us having this constant running thing of all these tasks. So I think a couple benefits we found of serverless functions is that you only pay per request, meaning that I don't pay for a server to keep running and running and running and running and running all day. I only pay for how much action that server actually has to process. So if you have stuff that processes at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock every day, serverless functions are pretty cool. There's little to no DevOps required in the sense that like you have to spin up a server and do all this stuff. And it is low risk, meaning that you don't have a lot to create or destroy this architecture. So if you try something out that's on a serverless function, you don't have to do much to really make that happen, but if it doesn't work, also it's not that much to take that away from your application. The downsides of that is that they become expensive at scale. So if you are paying per request, right? Let's say you're getting a request all day, every day, 24/7 hours a day. You're all of a sudden getting robbed by these third-party providers because you're paying for every single request. And so it might be cheaper to own the server in that way. They're limited language and environment, meaning that if you are a purist and you say, hey, I work in this one language, and I am not going to work in Python or Java or JavaScript. Besides having personal problems in life that I think you need to change, there is a kind of need for your teams to learn these different languages, right? And so it's sometimes nice easy to say, hey guys and girls, we're all suddenly just going to learn Java this week. Does that sound good? It's kind of, there's a little bit of adjustment that's required for your teams to kind of be able to operate in this way. They also require interfaces, which I think might seem like kind of trivial, but in a lot of ways it's hard for us to think sometimes within the perspective of, oh wait, I'm sending and receiving messages to another application. A lot of times we use frameworks like we use Rails at IZEA, so it's kind of known as the magical framework that does everything for you. And so it takes a while to get used to this idea of like, wait a second, what do you mean I can't just everything doesn't know what everything's going on, like I have to explicitly pass data and parameters between all my services. So the other thing that I want to talk about real quick is serverless backend services. And these are less used by backend developers explicitly, but I do want to go over them because I think they're important. In a lot of ways, they're kind of way more intense versions of the serverless functions we're talking about, where we're not just sending a request and getting a response, we're sending multiple requests and responses. We're kind of having this input-output constant stream going between each other, right? And so what I think about is kind of this popularity that we see within, if you've ever been part of a front-end development course or know people who have been part of that, a lot of the stuff that it teaches, they're more focused on teaching these front-end languages and ideas, and so they say, hey, we're going to use stuff like Firebase, and you don't have to worry about the database backend, just worry about learning the React stuff, right? But say you're a business of 4 to 5 React developers, and you don't know a thing about writing APIs, all of a sudden these services are really, really attracted to you because you can just pay, a certain amount a month, and all of a sudden you have a backend. That's pretty sweet. And they're really popular for mobile developers as well, and we'll discuss it in the next slide here. If you're in the mobile team, push notifications are a big part of Firebase. At IZEA, we use a lot of those kind of smaller services that may that kind of consolidate a lot of work, that take a lot of workload off our API and backend teams. And I think the biggest thing that these backend services provide to us is this ability to fill in a knowledge gap. So things that, we may have people on staff that know stuff about, but we don't necessarily have 4 or 5 folks that can come and deal with, let's say, writing a push notification system, or that we don't want to dedicate the time to, and so we can use the service to do otherwise. Again, this fills in knowledge gaps, it cuts down on costs, and it eliminates DevOps burden again. The downside is that you're delegating a visual need, in my opinion. So what that means is that we often have things that we implement as a serverless backend. So say you implement an API. Eventually you're going to want to hire guys and girls to come in and write that API, right? And so you're really just pushing off the need to hire devs and have that control later on. Again, you're limited control, whether it be languages, ideas, structures, API formats, and they require a lot of trust. If you guys have been developing long enough that you remember Parse, which is a product of Facebook, is this thing that all these mobile teams depended on, and these teams depended on to basically host their applications. Facebook bought it and was just like, yeah, we're shutting it down, don't care. And so they're like, you got a year to migrate, it's all good, but all of a sudden every team's panicking, right? Because they put their trust in the system and it just kind of went away. And that's the reality of what we do in tech, but it still sucks. So what I kind of want to spend time talking about there really in this whole thing is what does it mean for us, right? I explain what serverless architecture is, and what service functions are, maybe what a serverless backend is, but what are the implications for us as developers? And for me, I think a question to ask ourselves is how much control do we want over certain aspects? So do we want the ability to have control of the language that we use, or the format that we use, or how we process certain things, or do we just really want something to be done? What knowledge base does our team have? You may have a lot of really talented developers on your team, but you only have a certain amount of hours those folks can dedicate towards doing something. A lot of times it's not that you can't do it, it's just that it may not be the best use of your time to do it. Another thing to ask is how involved is your team in the current DevOps architecture? Does your team do DevOps? This is a question I like to ask a lot. We try to kind of have some sort of knowledge of AWS, not necessarily intense DevOps, but you have to know how to use AWS to really thrive at our company. And but for some people, the idea of handling that aspect is completely foreign and new. And sometimes you may want just another service to do that. So that's where I think services like Heroku come in really well, right? You can just have a repository, you can just say git push, and it's up there and add it, and it's really awesome, right? And also, how much involvement does our team want in the DevOps process? Do we want to spend our time doing that? Again, it's a question of not can we do it, because we're kind of programmers, so we'd love to prove that we can do things, but excuse me. But is it the best use of our time to do that? And so I think my kind of thesis in this is kind of the plot twist is to say that it really leads back to microservices. Because in a lot of ways, serverless functions are like microservices. They're smaller, more modular services that you use to communicate with your application. They can be written by you, or they can be written by a third party. In a lot of ways, if you own the microservice, you can do whatever language you want. If somebody else is doing it, it's their language and their stack, and they choose. And you can do whatever style you want, really, in both platforms, right? Like, if you want to write a bad, weird Python structure on AWS Lambda, you can do that. Like, you're paying the money. They're like, the joke I always say is that, Amazon's never going to say no to your money. It's just whether, like, you're actually utilizing that money well, right? And so my kind of hot take in all this is that I think that all serverless services will eventually be written as microservices, meaning that if you're really depending on something serverless, either it's going to go away or you're going to make it your own. And the way I view serverless in a lot of ways is it's a small bet for your company. So you want to try out something new? Why would you build a completely new application structure around an idea that you don't really know is going to work out? We've done this at IZEA before, where it's like, all right, we have this new business idea that we're going after, but we don't want to bet a lot of our infrastructure, our developers, our time around maintaining it. We just want to see if that actually takes hold, first of all. And so serverless is the fastest way for us to get to that point, right? If I can have somebody else hosting what I'm doing, and more so just executing a certain idea and a pattern and just getting that data to me as fast as possible, I'm going to do that. Not to mention, it's super cheap. It's cheap at a small scale, though. And I think that's important to realize because there's kind of a break-even point that I consider with serverless, right? It's kind of the analogy I was talking about earlier, is that if you pay per request, if you have consistent enough requests, it makes sense. But if you're getting requests all the time, all of a sudden you're like spending a ton of money on this thing. So again, what does this mean for us? I think that it means that we have to become well-versed in other languages. And it's something, luckily, that back-end developers are pretty good at, right? Because front-end developers are mainly just dominated by JavaScript. It's just what flavor of JavaScript you want to learn. But it requires us to be open from everything to Node to Java to JavaScript to whatever cool language they add next, right? Like it depends on what service you use and kind of what the flavors of the current backend community is. I think it means we have to learn more about DevOps, meaning like you may hate using AWS's console because it's pretty like it used to be really badly designed. They've gotten better, but like it used to look like it was straight out of the 90s. And it was kind of frustrating to use in a lot of ways. You're like, what am I doing? Am I crashing my complete business, or am I like deploying my code? Like I don't really know. And I think it requires us to also understand how interfaces go and how this kind of passing off of data goes. Because again, we're so used to just having all-in-one frameworks that do everything for us. So when should we use serverless architecture? I think when we want to scaffold, again, a new feature or idea and we want to test it out really quickly. When we maybe not be well equipped or want to handle the DevOps burden. When the technology that we have doesn't have necessarily a large team supported bet behind it yet, right? So as you know, we're always trying new things, but sometimes like we're not afraid to kill ideas. And so we don't want to necessarily commit our whole team behind something and then be like, just kidding, we're not doing that. So we also want to save money because saving money is really cool. And at IZEA, we've cut a lot of costs this year, but how has it been from cutting developers or anything like that? It's been from cutting our AWS bill by trying to streamline our operations and really cut down on the actual amount of servers we're using and more depending on smaller services in places that we can. I think when you should use microservice architecture, kind of increase your bet, is when we want to roll our own solution. When we want to control the environment or stack because we're really passionate about that. Maybe you feel that you can write something in a different language that's not on AWS, IBM, or any other service provider. And you want to do it well, but you want to have that full control of everything to down to what Unix or what Linux you're writing it on. And it's also when we want to invest more into a solution than maybe that third party allows us to do, right? Like third party providers are going to try to protect themselves in a lot of ways and try to make it accessible for you to do, but they might kind of prevent you from tapping into a lot of stuff depending on what you're using, right? Like if I'm using Firebase, I can't really specify how the API is structured. I can just specify what my response is going to be. And so I think it's also important at the end of the day to just forget the hype around it that we might hear, right? Some guy or girl might come to you and say, well, at this company we do this really cool thing and we're the best because we're a leader in this and you should listen to us. But it's really like asking themselves like, okay, this didn't work well for you, right? Like people always, I always joke about like, I confuse them, that's why we use Rails at IZEA. But it's ultimately because it works well for us. It's not because it's the fastest language in the world, it's not because it's the fastest thing in the world, but it's because it works for us. The same reason why do we use Lambdas and all these other things. It's like, I mean, sure, we have the resources and the team and the ability to do what we want to do. But for us, this works best. And so it's really asking yourself, okay, where's my situation? What are the needs of my company, my team? Like, are we really stressed in some area that can really be alleviated by a third party? And can we use that relief and the cost savings that we get to eventually hire more people behind something? So that's all I got for right now. But thank you guys. Yes, ma'am. What's up?
So, how's like vendor lock, right? So if you're running on on AWS Lambda, and you want to go to a different like serverless architecture, what's the like? Is it difficult? Does a lot of your code get to transfer? How's that?
So the way that LAMP is worked in a lot of ways, right, is that you come and say, hey, I want to run this runtime. So you're limited by that runtime. So depending on what version of Node you love or what version of Java you might like, you say, hey, give me a runtime, and then you can either paste in, you can either write code in that browser right there, or you can upload a whole application instantly, right? So if you want to switch to something, let's say you want to switch, your question saying if I just wanted to completely get off that or switch to another provider.
Like another, like a serverless provider. Like,
yeah. It should be pretty well. I mean, we haven't done that at IZEA. Sorry, we haven't done that. We haven't just like said like, you know what, we don't like Amazon, we're going to, you know, IBM or Windows or something like that. It's that they function in the same way, but the pitfall that you could fall into that is it should be pretty simple. It's like, let me take the stuff I was running on this and put it on the other thing. But the caveat is that there are some differences. So for example, Google Functions supports their like language Kotlin or whatever, and I think that's it, or maybe Java or JavaScript. But like, you know, I would say like if you're running Python on stuff, it can be difficult. And so part of that's just because service providers like are kind of stubborn to add new languages. But the other part of that is, you know, AWS wants to be known as a place that you can only run Python and it's the fastest, and oh my goodness, and nobody else does this, right? Nobody wants to say, well, you can literally do the same thing here, but for way cheaper, because all of a sudden, you know, somebody's lunch is going to be equal. But, yeah.
Other questions? No? Okay, cool. Thanks. Welcome, first of all, welcome Doug. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for having me. Good old T-Rex Club. So, yeah, Doug's going to be talking about Node, and what does that say?
A beautiful world, async-flavored.
No, the bottom bit.
Oh, yeah. How Node.js is running the machines and processes of today and tomorrow.
Awesome. So I'm excited about this, and hopefully you guys enjoy it, so take it away.
All right. So, yeah, so I guess best place to start with me. So this is kind of my first talk, kind of getting into the community here. Pretty much a veteran Java developer, and got into Node.js right around 2012 when I'd say it's kind of started picking up some pace, and really loved it and figured out that it was really the platform for me. So I really want to go over that tonight, some trials and tribulations that I've had over the years, developing technologies for my businesses, and also kind of go into you know, why Node is a great platform for quick innovation. So I'm going to go over a couple, I mean it's honestly 2 files, but I threw up a Git repo with all the slides and everything in there. So if you guys want to use that, the link's right there. Okay, so like I was saying, a little bit about me. So I've been a developer for 10 years, since Internet Explorer 7, so I think that, you know, is commendable. Pretty much just, you know, mild-mannered Java developer by day, work with Riptide, and actually got somebody from Riptide here. Doing big data, AI, doing different things with, you know, really distributed systems, and that's really been kind of the world I was into, the enterprise world, and have really kind of started now, I own some businesses on the side, and have started finding that Node is really like the best technology to kind of, you know, invent whatever you need for your business. So really got turned on to JavaScript and was really excited about that, and just really hopped into Node as it became big. So really, like, big idea of my presentation is how Node is really a platform for getting it done quickly, rather than kind of sitting there. And I find that, like, you know, being a Java developer, I spend a lot of time writing things that, you know, could have already been written for me. So really just kind of how Node is a great platform for innovation, and how it can quickly, you know, get your project, your next project off the floor. So one of the things that I kind of want to cover is why I really love JavaScript right now, before I kind of get into like some case studies. So really exciting things that are happening in the JS world right now. Strong typing. We're finally getting over to like actually having types, which is amazing. And then the other thing is RxJS and reactive programming as a whole. I think that's kind of a movement beyond JS. I think that's a lot bigger than just that. So it's really happening like everywhere right now. Reactive programming is becoming really big in all major languages, so this kind of goes beyond Node, but I think it's definitely one of the most exciting parts of the scene. So really quick recap for everyone as far as Node. So begins in 2009, Ryan Dahl creates Node. And it's really now, it's become a super vibrant ecosystem with a ton of developers, and I think that, there's so many packages on NPM you can't see straight, and we all know developers have had issues with that. But really, what Node did for the community, I think, if we look at kind of what it's done over the years, is it's really kind of showed us what a single thread can do, and it's opened up new ideas as to what async means, and how far can we go down and make things async, before we kind of depend on some kind of synchronous, business requirement or something of that nature. So things I think are cool were reactive and strong typing. Just really quick example here, this matrix-inspired example. Pretty much just demonstrating kind of that at the end of the day, if we create, two objects and we don't have any types, we don't really have any problems when we go to assign things to each other that aren't of the same types. We all know this. We kind of feel like this maybe sometimes, where Agent Smith and Neo are kind of forming together. But nowadays we have things like TypeScript that are really powerful, that are allowing us to enforce types on objects that we're creating. And this is a lot bigger than I think a lot of developers, when they first see this, they're like, oh, that's cool, you got type for your object, but what does that really do? It has so many implications beyond just having types for objects. We talk about things like testing, and especially test-driven design. It becomes much more straightforward when we start implementing types. This has been a huge part of making JS actually reasonable. And yeah, as you can see, if we were to run that last code example, we would get a type error here that one is not assignable to the type agent, and woohoo! We saved the day, yeah! So that is the strong typing. RxJS, I think, is like kind of the other side of things, where streams are becoming like first-class citizens. And I think it's just really a new way of thinking about JS, we kind of went from just like the old days of callbacks to kind of getting into promises, and now we're in RxJS. I think that that's like really where the community needs to go as a whole, especially if we're going to create this platform that creates quick innovation. So why I told you all these things is because I think it's a big part of making Node a powerful platform that can quickly allow you to innovate and iterate. So this kind of leads me into my next idea, which is that the programming world oftentimes really is there to define and implement business requirements. And we do that now through RxJS kind of by contracts. So this is like really a perfect fit. So getting into kind of, I guess, just things, like I said, I was going to go over some trials and tribulations here. I guess I kind of would just start from the top. So I started a moving company. I'm sure a couple of you guys have heard of it in here. We're an Orlando-based company called Nightspeed Moving. And we started back in 2011, and we had a founder, kind of doing moves on the weekend. I came in about 2013 and realized that in order for this company to scale, we were going to need to create a platform that would allow us to scale. Now, the thing is that at the time, we didn't really have the business that we needed in order to take it to scale. But things have kind of converged over the years, and we've kind of got to the point where now we finally need, and actually today I sent out the first link finally for it to our management staff so that they can start using it. But we are finally getting a logistics platform up and booted and ready to go to handle this massive business that we've created over these last 4 years. So I'm going to do a group retrospective here, just kind of kind of give you guys ideas of kind of what I was thinking about and things that I've learned. So kind of give you an overview of the platform. We're on Node 6.11. That's because Elastic Beanstalk is fantastic and limits Node usage to a very specific subset of versions. NPM 5.5.1, AngularJS, which is a darn shame, but it's 1.6, so it's kind of the end of the life cycle for Angular JS, and hopefully we'll be moving into the next greatest Angular release here, which seems to be every day. And then Loopback 3.16, so all node-based technologies. So basic idea is of this platform. So when we started this business, we started this moving company, hired a bunch of movers, and we were like, okay, this is really cool. But realized over time, as we grew into more cities and more destinations, that we needed some kind of a computer program to handle all these things. So one of the first touch points that we had to focus on in order to make this effective was to go into the, make it easy for the user to schedule their booking online. I don't know of any other moving company, except for maybe one that you can book online. I think this is something that, like all millennials expect now, is to be able to book online. So we knew that we were going to have to create that touch point first. So we created a really easy web application for our users, for our customers to get on and book their moves. And then what we do is we take it from there and we push it into our platform called Manage Move. That essentially what it's really is, it's a big state machine that enforces that certain things are taking place in a certain order. The truck is booked, that the contractors are booked for the job. And we built it out and kind of made it so that all these jobs could flow down a similar pipeline, right? So it was really exciting. And we're actually, like I said, I sent out the first link, so like right as we're launching this platform, I'm already thinking of like what's the next move for this platform. And it's really that like a few things. I think that number one is like containerization is so it's underused right now. It's like a very specific sub-niche of the community is like really into Docker and Kubernetes and things like that. But a lot of people aren't. I think it's a very like strange technology the first couple times you see it, and that might be why. But one of the things that we learned is that we really need to containerize everything. It is unreal how amazing it makes your life when you containerize everything. And then also opinions are great. Well, at least when you like them, they are. And a lot of Node frameworks I'm seeing, because they're so young, like I said, I come from a Java world where the opinions are commonplace. There's an opinion for everything. Node really isn't very opinionated in some senses. It's very opinionated in some senses, but in others it's not. And when we built this like huge web application with like all these enterprise rules, all these business rules and requirements, we weren't really thinking about opinions being super important. But have since like figured out, wow, we really need a lot of great opinions to back all this. So we want to switch over to maybe like a Java platform to do that. And I think that kind of gets out of like the Node, the high praise of Node there. But sometimes you have to go enterprise, right? This is like, sometimes Node gets the job done. And I think it was kind of like something that Taylor almost touched on is that sometimes your platform limits kind of like you want to custom roll things yourself, you want to have them in-house, you want to have them close to home so that you have full control and full access over everything. And also like unify under a single framework if you can, especially Node developers. I think I can't even like, if I wanted to like count the number of packages in my package.json, it'd probably take the upper scale of an integer size for that one. But unify under one platform if you can. Like really try to go towards using one thing. So we're going to be switching over to React and React Native so that we can bring things together instead of going into like the whole Angular life cycle and getting stuck in Angular 5 and Angular 6 and Angular who knows what. Their upgrades have been a nightmare, even though they're pledging now that it's going to get a lot better. Unifying under one framework I think is like really powerful because it's going to allow you to develop a lot more quickly. So future plans, pretty much, I kind of talked about them, touched on them. So going to Docker completely and Swarm for deployment. Sorry, any Kubernetes fans out there. And then Spring I/O for just kind of making everything, like I said, sometimes you need an enterprise option. Spring I/O is amazing for that. And then React and React Native for the platform as a whole. So that's pretty much, kind of the cut and dry stuff that I come up with there. Next part I want to talk about is really like how Node became super powerful for us, developing something really quickly. So Buddy and I realized like about a year and a half ago, that home automation is like one of those things you see in movies, and it's not like everywhere yet. I'm kind of a little bit surprised that home automation isn't bigger than it is in terms of being able to turn things on and off, from wherever you are in your house, wherever you are in the world, really. So saw this as a problem a little bit ago and started looking into automating my home with devices that were already available. But the problem is that everything is really expensive, like unreal. And maybe that's just because I'm a broke junior developer, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like $40 for a single outlet is a little ridiculous. The cheapest outlet that you can get that's connected via Wi-Fi or Zigbee or whatever their protocol is roughly around $40. So we looked at that problem and we said, well, what if we can cut that down to $10? I think $10 is kind of that price point where you feel comfortable buying it. You could buy a pack of 10 for 100. It seems much more attractive at $10 per unit to be able to turn on and off lights from, saying like, Alexa, turn off the lights in the bedroom. So we built a solution that was powered by Node, and actually this is the physical chip up here. Yeah, there it is. That's the actual. Now this is like really ugly. This is going to have a case on it once we kind of get through everything. But what we did was we connected everything through Node. It's the module itself. This physical hardware module is Arduino based, so it's running on Wi-Fi. We wrote our own firmware, and it's basically over like an MQTT like sub-pub model. And then we kind of wired it all together with Node-RED, which I'm sure if there's Node developers around here, you guys know Node-RED. Node-RED's amazing. It's flow-based programming, so we're able to quickly connect nodes to each other and create flows of data from item X to item Y. And then build a network of connected things, which is very natural for IoT. The software kind of booting up. I actually really don't know why I put this slide here. But Node is really just making IoT fun. And I think that Node, and this is kind of where I'm going to get into my like preaching Node section of the little conversation here. So Node is an amazing framework when your scope is limited. I'm sure I got some backlash from that one, but it's a really great framework when you have a very specific use case, right? So if you have a very specific use case, or at least I've found, it's really powerful, it's really quick to get things started, and it's the best platform to kind of iterate and develop quickly. So I don't think it's really one of those platforms where, like you can see developing a framework 5 years down the line that's like super, super massive that, or at least I can't see that, that's super, super massive that is really still effective and isn't a nightmare to maintain from like a Git standpoint or something like that. I think it's like really great for making a powerful iteration framework. So like, if your boss comes to you and is like, hey, I need this by Friday, go to Node. If it's something where it's like a little more long term, sometimes other platforms are a little bit better. But for iterating and quickly getting something out, I think it's the best platform in the world. And it's got a super passionate community around it that gives back. It's like everyone's giving back. Where I think Java is a little bit different. There's a lot of closed source, projects and things like that. And really just like takeaways of the conversation is that, because I know I kind of like covered a lot of topics for my first speech here. So nothing new here, really just demonstrating a point. And that point is that it's really a platform with no boundaries, very small boundaries and low inhibition. developing. So I guess it's the college frat dude of developing. And in order for trillions of sensors, like we say there's going to be trillions of sensors on the IoT revolution and all these things by 2022. If this is going to happen, we have to create and maintain a platform like Node that allows us to quickly and clearly innovate. And I think Node has really hit that on the head. Like they've become a platform where you can get up and go instead of spending 45 minutes, kind of like setting up your builder, your compiler rather, and getting your build process out. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for coming out, guys. I really appreciate it.
So yeah, anybody got any questions for Doug? There's got to be at least one. Come on.
Yeah, I got one.
All right, here we go.
Any thoughts or ideas yet on the second product that you talked about for actually getting the hardware built? Have you guys started looking into that side of it?
So like the actual, like building the physical piece that does it?
Like the switch or the outlet.
Yeah, well, so actually funny enough, this is it. Yeah, so this is the internal workings of it. I had an electrical engineer I'm a good buddy with, and him and I just sat down over a couple weekends and figured it out. So, yeah.
I've never heard of Node.js. Can you just tell us what it is?
Sure. Yeah, so Node.js is an amazing platform that allows you to do flow-based programming. So programming most of the time is seen from a, like this component wires to this component, but there's no visual aspect to it. Node.js really is just a flow-based, like you can kind of connect IoT devices. So you can connect abstract things, so like an MQTT to another device like that goes over HTTP, and you can transform the call in between, and it allows you to kind of hook all these nodes up together and wire data flows from like point A to point B to point C. Yeah.
Does Node.js support, so you said MQTT, does it support Thread or any of the other IoT frameworks?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's really kind of like up to the implementer to decide what, like, if you can support it through your own package, you can bring that package in and then just kind of create like a basic I/O for it, and then just wire in whatever protocol you want. So Zigbee, like all those play nice with it. And then our goal is like kind of a business, like because it's not really a business at this point, is to create those packages that are necessary to kind of integrate with everything. Like I think everyone kind of uses Node.js, like there's no secret. Yeah, just create all the connectors pretty much.
The hardware plus the packages you just do?
Exactly, yeah. And then we would train technicians in the field to like kind of go into people's homes and create these flows together so that we can make this hopefully across the entire nation.
You got one back there? Go for it.
With respect to Node and IZEA, one of the things that has kept me personally looking at it was the issue that happened about 18 months ago with commonly used packages dropping off. How is the community recovering from that? How do we know this isn't going to happen again?
Yeah, so I think this is where kind of I guess the point of the conversation was that Node sometimes, like I think it's a little more ambitious and it's a little quicker to development lifecycle of products and things like that. So I guess the answer that I have is that I can't really think of a way to prevent issues happening where somebody deprecates something and then removes it and then it's gone completely. I guess the hopes would be that we would be able to develop a product that kind of has a very narrow set of packages that hopefully we can kind of develop and come in on. If we do, pretty much just find equivalent packages that kind of do similar things and hope for the best, and decouple everything so that if there is a major issue, Lodash or that was an old school one, but like some package like that goes out, we can just quickly recouple something else in a new dependency.
Other questions? I have one if nobody else wants to. So, kind of an opinion question. A lot of the big sell for Node, at least in the web context, is hey, you can run the same code on your front end as your back end, right? So, we're starting to see maybe this idea that maybe other languages might be brought to the browser runtime. Would you rather see JavaScript Node everywhere, or would you rather see other languages like you use Java as a background in the browser?
Yeah, it's like shaking his head. Java in the browser would be scary, but I really, and we've been down that road before. Shaking. But anyway, so I think the answer for that for me is that I'd love to see Node everywhere. Even though I'm going to sit here and say like, Node, and then have some like, maybe Node's not the best here. I'm still, I think, an advocate at the end of the day for like, let's go all Node.
Cool, awesome. Last questions? Yeah.
Just a quick one. Do you use ArcsJS on the server side?
We don't yet currently, and I think this has kind of been like the whole, you mean for the home automation technology?
Or anything. I was looking at the Node-RED stuff, and all the flow-based stuff reminded me of ArcsJS. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's exactly it. So I'm thinking about contracts as kind of like the foundation for the entire system. I really want to move to getting to RxJS. I think the community has moved so fast at this point. Like I'm still converting old Angular JS apps over to Angular 2+, 4+ apps right now. So I'm still like kind of getting into moving everything over and migrating. But my hopes are that I really want to go towards that because that's just the way of the future. It's so awesome.
That's it? Anybody? Awesome. Well, thank you, Doug, very much for doing this.
Thank you.
You got your. I mean, I'll take it if you want. So that's pretty much it for the talks and all of that tonight. But ultimately, I put this thing together so we could kind of meet each other, right? So we could get to know each other, have a bit more of a community when it comes to backend development. So I encourage you guys, hang out for a little bit. It's only 8-10 or so, say hi, meet at least one person if you haven't already done so, and if you also wouldn't mind sticking around to help with a little bit of the cleanup, we're gonna put these chairs and tables back in order. That would be big help to me. So I guess with that, first Orlando backend developers meetup. As I said, stick around, have fun, drink some more beer, eat some more pizza, and we'll see you otherwise back here in a month, December 6th. Thanks, guys.